So what do dinosaurs and words have in common? Well, the answer is they can both be fossilized, and it actually happens in a somewhat similar way. So just like dinosaurs get trapped in sticky tar pits, and sorry for stretching the metaphor a little bit, but words also stick to one another, and they get stuck so much that they become fossilized. And what do I mean by this? Let me give you an example. Let's look at the phrase good riddance. So, you know what this means? It means like someone's gone and you're happy they're gone, or something happened and you're happy it's gone. But what does riddance mean? We don't use riddance except for the phrase good riddance. And that is a fossil word. There is a word that's part of this phrase that's no longer used anywhere else except for that phrase. The word has almost lost meaning on its own. And fossil words are almost always frozen in idioms like good riddance. So idioms have their own meanings, very strong meanings that can sometimes be actually different from the individual meanings of the word themselves. And they can be used very commonly even when the words that they were made of disappeared already, just like good riddance. Riddance used to be a word in the English language, it's not anymore. So when a word has a tendency to stick to another word, we call that a collocation. So a collocation is just two words that are likely to appear next to each other. So a lot of words can appear together at random and not really have much of a pattern, but a collocation is two words that are kind of likely to appear next to each other. If they're next to each other, it's probably not random chance. It's probably because they kind of belong to each other, just like in an idiom. Now, there are many levels of collocations. There are weak and strong collocations, but fossil words are probably the highest level of collocation. They can't appear anywhere except with their other words in the fossilized idiom. So what are some other examples of fossil words? So we look at sleight and sleight of hand. Sleight doesn't really have its own meaning these days. It's not used, but it kind of meant kind of like sly or sneaky or tricky. Let's look at the phrase without further ado. What does ado mean? Have you ever used ado? I've never used ado. It basically comes from to do, without further ado, without doing anything else, we're going to go ahead and get to the point. And another one that we use a lot, I feel like, is out of wedlock. Now, interestingly, we have a lot of words for marriage, but out of wedlock. We have this very old English sounding word, wedlock. It's not used anymore except in this phrase. It's kind of interesting, like, why do we still use it even though there are many alternatives to wedlock? I kind of like how it sounds, but we don't call a husband and wife couple, we don't say they're in wedlock very much anymore. So are there some other forms of collocations that have their own names? One of my favorites, pretty much just because of the name. This isn't a super widely used phrase among linguists, but it does exist and it is a real concept. They're called lexical bundles. It's such an awesome sounding name to me. It just sounds kind of fun. It's basically just a phrase composed of 4 words, no more and no less, that have a specific meaning or function. It can be a lexical bundle as long as they are kind of likely to appear next to each other. The linguists who came up with lexical bundles decided that they shouldn't have more than 4 words or less than 4 words because more than 4 words wasn't really, it was just so rare that it wasn't statistically significant. And less than 4 could be kind of random, or it just happens too many times to be very significant. An example, in academic papers, we would say, that is to say, to kind of explain a point you just made or to clarify something. And we don't say that is to say in conversation very often. A counterexample to that among children, I don't want to. There's a lot of kids who say that a lot. Kids don't like doing a lot of things. That's probably not going to find that in an academic paper, but it is a commonly used phrase and it kind of has meaning by itself. Now, obviously, this one has meaning with the individual words, but kids learn language in phrases a lot of the time. Before they even master the use of I, don't, and want, and to, they can probably learn the meaning of the phrase and the use and function of I don't want to and use it as a chunk, as a lexical bundle, not as a collection of individual words. So there's also a lot of simple collocations, like 2-word collocations we can call bigrams. So let's look at large pizza. So you wouldn't say big pizza unless you were very specifically trying to emphasize it and break the collocation just so someone notices what you're saying. Big pizza sounds a bit weird. Large pizza is the natural way of saying it and to order it. The phrase in great detail. You can't say, I mean, you could say it would sound weird, in large detail. In great detail is, you know, it just sounds right. And what makes this sound right? It's the collocation. Our brains kind of just know that some words have a tendency to stick together. And if we break that stickiness, if we pull them apart, it's kind of jarring sometimes. One last example, strong smell. And there's a lot of synonyms of strong, forceful and impactful or powerful. And you could use some of those words, maybe powerful to describe a smell, but it would be a little uncommon. You would use it more of a for emphasis kind of thing than the normal strong smell collocation. And so that's what collocations are. Even though there are synonyms that seem like logically they should be able to go there, our brains just think they shouldn't for whatever reason. My theory is, and probably the general linguistic theory, is that this is just a way for the human brain to optimize the language. It's just a lot easier for us to cache things into our memory as chunks rather than as individual words sometimes. Like when you're reading a book, you sometimes don't read it word by word by word. Your brain automatically looks for those chunks. It's a way to kind of get a piece of information all at once with 4 different words rather than your brain parsing out each individual word. It just makes everything a little bit faster. And it's this reason that if you listen very closely to a lot of song lyrics, they can sometimes sound a little off because musicians have to break collocation a lot. If they're trying to rhyme something, usually the rhyme is not the best collocation. They'll have to use a word that doesn't quite fit to make it rhyme, even though it kind of makes logical sense in English. Next time you listen to a song, see if you can find a place where an artist breaks a collocation just to make a rhyme. It's kind of funny when you analyze it that way. So collocations are pretty fascinating. If you want to learn more about collocations in linguistics, we call the field of examining chunks of words phraseology. If you want to Google that and learn more about it, it's actually pretty fun. There's a lot of interesting studies about it, and it's kind of a new thing to be analyzed like this because it takes a lot of technology to find these patterns in a huge, large body of text. It's really hard to do by hand. So if you're interested, just look it up. And thanks for watching. If you like this video, please give me a like and a subscribe. If you dislike it, please hit the dislike button. And thank you very much for watching. So idioms have their own meanings, like sometimes almost,